Hello there, and welcome to Joy Sightings, edition number 48. It's my pleasure again to read to you from The Wit and Wisdom of Safed the Sage. Safed the Sage was the pen name of William E. Barton, a pastor who lived over 100 years ago. William Barton wrote his parables for a Sunday school magazine that he edited for his denomination, and they were published separately in books that were rather popular at the time. Today I read 3 of his parables: The Quick and the Dead, Hollyhocks and the Storm, and the Circus Procession. The Quick and the Dead. We went, I and Keturah, unto the great hall where the symphony orchestra of 100 men who have skill play on instruments of music. And one said, This day there is to be a first performance of a new overture, and the composer is a man of this city. Come and meet him. So I went and had speech with him. And he was nervously awaiting his own number, which was the 3rd, and the first 2 were long, and seemed to him longer. And he opened his heart and told me many things. And he said, I have lived all my life in hope of this day. In my boyhood I loved music, and I worked hard to earn money that I might study it. Then did I begin to teach piano and violin and voice, but now I teach only harmony. And all the years I have waited for the time when a piece of mine own composing should be played by the symphony orchestra, and I would lead it. And he told me how long it took him to compose the overture, and how many times he rewrote it, and how he labored nights for 4 months to copy the scores for the orchestra parts. And it came to pass that his piece was rendered, and he conducted it. And it required 12 minutes. And for that he had worked 40 years. And at the end he was applauded, and they called him back thrice. And after all other men and women had ceased, still did I applaud him. And Keturah, she also applauded, so that those about us joined in, and so we gave him 1 more comeback than the law required. And Keturah said, I have never known thee to applaud so much. And I said, This man is of mine own city, and treadeth the same hard pavements that jar me, and he hath long taught reluctant pupils to play on the psaltery and the sackbut and the dulcimer and the Jew's harp, all the while dreaming of this day. And his triumph lasteth just 12 minutes. Now the Lord do so to me, and more also, if I give him not all that is coming to him. And Keturah said, But the rest of the program is of great composers, even Liszt and Mozart and Mendelssohn. And thou didst applaud them but little. And I said, If the great composers were living in this town and walked the floor nights with the baby, then would I applaud them more. And I said, I also am in daily competition with the mighty dead. For men say, Why should we pay $1 and the 4th part of $1 for the parables of Safed the Sage, when we can buy Shakespeare and Bacon for $50 each? And Shakespeare and Bacon can now live on smaller royalties than I, and their wives need not new Easter bonnets. Even so hath this man been all his life in competition with Liszt and Mendelssohn and Mozart, and he liveth in my own town, and hath a name that is spelled like unto the way it is pronounced. I honor the mighty dead for their work's sake, but I will not blister my hands for them. I would rather applaud a living American than a dead Dutchman." And the intermission ended, and we heard a symphonic poem by Liszt. And him I applauded some, and sufficient. But Liszt hath been dead some time, and there was another man who came back one time more, because I and Keturah kept clapping. Hollyhocks and the Storm. There grow hollyhocks at the home where we abode while we made ready for us the house hard by the synagogue, for I planted them, and they will grow for many years. And now, after 2 years, there grow hollyhocks at the house hard by the synagogue, for I planted them, and when any friend of mine did send me seed, saying, Behold, here are hollyhocks of a choice variety, then did I dig up another place for them, and plant them there. And the time of blossoming drew nigh, and there came a mighty rain, with a great wind, and the hollyhocks were beaten down so that they lay flat. And I walked among them, I and Keturah, and she said, Behold how they begin to lift themselves again. And I said, Yea, but I fear that they will not grow straight. And Keturah put her hand under one of them, and lifted it gently, as she would have lifted a little child that had stumbled and fallen upon its face, and the hollyhock stood up, albeit with soiled face and fingers, and was erect. And she lifted another likewise, and she did it gently. And she said, Behold, they desire to rise, for God made them upright. But when they get so far down, they must be helped. And Keturah said, My lord, it is even so with folks. And I said, Keturah, thou hast well said. It is hard enough to stand erect when one hath never fallen. And there are men and women who are down and think they are out, but are not, who need just a little lift, which thou art giving to these hollyhocks. And Keturah said, It's a sad thing for a flower that hath the nature of a thing erect and beautiful, to be beaten down so that it lieth in the mud, and hath no comeliness or beauty. It is only a little thing to lift it up that it may grow. Yea, and if it need a stake that it may have something to tie to, it is a good use of timber. Therefore did I and Keturah make a covenant with each other and the Lord, that as we walk where the storms of life have beaten, we would lift up every flower of God that hath fallen across our path, and not trample upon it, nor despise it, but seek to make it fit to bloom in the garden of God. The Circus Procession. Now the daughter of Keturah spake unto me, saying, Father, behold, there cometh a circus to town. Wilt thou borrow my little daughter, and take her thereto? And I said, Among the many uses of little children, one is this, that by reason of them it becometh the duty of grandfathers to attend the circus. And we went early, but we did not avoid the rush. Now we went behind the tents to where they made ready for the great parade, and there were famous characters of history in their chariots, and there was a calliope that played Keep the Home Fires Burning on steam whistles, and there were very funny clowns, but not so funny as clowns were when I was a lad, and there were wild beasts, as many as went into the ark. And there were 9 elephants. Now the elephants were timid, and they liked not to go in procession. Therefore did their trainer take an old elephant, and set him in the front with a mahout on his head, and he commanded another elephant to come forward and take with his trunk the tail of the first elephant. Then did he bring forward the third elephant, and command him to hold the tail of the second elephant. Likewise did he with all. And the elephants were no longer timid, but walked every one of them in the big, broad footsteps of the one before him, and held every elephant to another's tail. Now when the daughter of Keturah saw this, she was greatly amused, and she laughed, and I laughed with her. For the elephants were so large, and the tails which they clung to were so small. And I said, My little maiden, what thou seest is a parable, and even such is life. Men and women who are old enough and big enough, and ought to know better, stand trembling even like those great beasts, till they have some slender thing to cling to, whereby they may follow in the procession, not knowing whither they go. But the little maiden listened not to my moral. Wherefore did we go and buy peanuts to feed the elephants when they returned, and some pink lemonade and a red balloon for ourselves. And it was a good show, but not such as they had when I was a lad.